Cripps almost close enough. In fact, he was.
Big hit. And Maynard's left his opponent down. The numbers got unlucky, brought it down. A free shot at goal. Jason Horn Francis. The Hornet lands one.
Hello and welcome to a special 2022 season preview edition of Access All Areas. Damian Barrett and Matthew Lloyd with you. And Lloydie, we've seen 3 Premiership droughts broken in the past 6 seasons. Do we get to see another one in 2022?
Well, I think the Saints fans, Dame, will be hoping it's them, but I don't think it'll be them this year. I think the Fremantle Dockers, I think they're coming hard, but I don't think their time's yet. The Bombers, I know Mickey Malthouse thinks it could be them. I don't think it'll be them either. And the Blues, they're not ready. So I think the Brisbane Lions, if there's going to be a drought, I know it isn't a huge one, but it's still getting on
2003 being the last time.
Yes, it's still a long time. I think they're the closest to breaking any sort of drought.
And they're my tip for the flag. For what it's worth, Lord, I'll get your tip in a few moments' time. Let's go back to where it finished in 2021 and where it's going to start on Wednesday night in 2022. That being Melbourne versus Western Bulldogs. The famous victory in Perth's Optus Stadium, the Premiership drought, the 1964 drought being broken on this occasion by the Demons in one of the most famous historic wins of any team in a grand final.
Oh, when people look back in, 20, 25 years and young kids look at the scoreboard, they'll say, oh, Melbourne belted the Western Bulldogs. But Simon Goodwin said in a documentary, we're 1 goal away from the Bulldog kicking that, then we're gone. We're in trouble. And yet the swing was just one of the most famous swings in AFL history.
Let's pull it apart to a point, Lotto. It was a horror show for a Bulldogs person and a joy for everyone attached to the Demons. And we know that the Marcus Bontempelli goal that took them 19 points clear put the nervous thoughts through everyone in the Demons. And then we'll just go back now to the centre of the ground where this game was ultimately won. And we'll get you to forensically analyse what then took place.
So where you see Libba and Bontempelli at the back of the stoppage behind Tim English, it's called a sweeper. So Libba's a sweeper. You can't let players through. You've got to bumper bar them. You've got to check them. But this just happened time and time again. So we talk about the strength of the Western Bulldogs. It's their midfield, but their midfield cost them the game. So we'll break this one down even more. So same again, Liberatore becomes a sweeper. So you can't let players through. That's his job. But what's the charge and the surge from Melbourne? And it's all over. So this happened time and time again. You thought they would have adjusted. They didn't adjust. Momentum got away from them and a grand final got away from them, Damo. So that's where this game was won and lost through that midfield area.
Grand finals have been lost by 70-plus points before, Lord. It'll happen again, but it hasn't happened when one of the teams that loses the game is 19 points clear halfway through the third quarter. Are they the types of memories and images that will just never leave anyone attached to that team?
Yeah, sometimes you'd rather get belted by 100 points and it doesn't probably hurt as much because you just weren't good enough. But I lost the grand final at Brisbane in 01 and we were 3 goals up just on half time. We lapsed and then we had the first 8 inside 50s of the third quarter. Didn't take advantage of that. So that really hurts. But I want to ask you were in Perth last year, the bad blood between these teams in the aftermath, Damo. Can you see it spilling out at all on Wednesday night?
Yeah, I can once the ball's bounced. We've seen both clubs go out of their way to play it down, but witnessing it to an extent from a distance firsthand. I mean, even the Brownlow medal night, there were buses waiting for both teams and neither team wanted to go early. And they were effectively in the same room without needing to talk or wanting to talk to each other. You then had the playing of the Freed from the Desire song after the game. And then you had the nightclub incident or the night establishment issue some days later when the Dogs had one level and the Demons wanted the next level, and the players came together to a point. So yeah, I can once the ball's bounced, it will spill over.
Hey Damo, we're talking about teams who could potentially win the Premiership. Richmond are a team I want to talk about because I think when you've been up for so long, like Brisbane were and Hawthorn, once the fall comes, it comes for a long time. But this feels a little bit different for me. I didn't think they could challenge, but their pre-season and all the talk, they seem revitalised.
Yeah, well, they get the best player in the competition back, don't they, in many people's eyes. He missed the last 6 games of last year, Dusty Martin. And to me, Lordo, I reckon they've got one of the great recruits in Robbie Tarrant. He's not an All-Australian officially, but he's an All-Australian type of player, and I think he could have actually had a couple of jackets to his name already. He's a North Melbourne best and fairest, and I think he adds a dimension to them this year that they're going to really benefit from, and ultimately allow that man on screen to play that old-fashioned utility role, going back and forward, Noel Bolter.
I'm with you on Tarrant. He's 33 years of age, but he seems a young 33, still quick, off the mark, and I think he's an upgrade on Asprey. who was a Premiership player. So I think it's great. And with Noah Bolter, I think he's an untapped talent. He just hasn't scratched the surface of what he's capable of. And
still sky limit.
Oh, I think it is, but I thought he could be the best centre-half back in the game, but now he's going to be ruck forward, so let's see how he can adjust to that new role.
I love a guy who opposition doesn't know where he's going to start every single time, let alone before the game, but during a game as well. The Cats, Lord, you talk about Richmond, where they're at. They're intriguing to everyone. I love their attitude. Their attitude being, let's play to win a premiership every single season. It gets them to a certain point. It got to a grand final in 2020. They got blown away in a prelim last year. They're going to tinker with their game plan this year. I like them again to be right up there at the very pointy end.
Yeah, I'm not as confident. I think that the talent that they've got allows them to probably play finals again. But in terms of challenging, this is still a concern. I know they get sick and tired of this, but they're number one for most games on average, and that can help you get to the finals. But I think it hurts you come finals against a young, hungry team like Melbourne and Port smashed them. They were embarrassed in 2 finals. And then obviously for games played. And Jordan Clark, I think he should be on their list, and he should be one of the ones that get them going again. But for whatever reason, they wouldn't play him. And I think what he'll do for Fremantle this year could come back to haunt Geelong, because he's the type of player that they needed with the youth at Geelong.
What they do expect to get, though, different to last year, is a fully fit Jeremy Cameron, who goals per game will have him kicking 70, 80, even 90 goals. New coaches, Lordo, there's 3 of them upon entry to 2022. We'll talk about that man there in a few moments' time in more depth, Michael Voss, but the impact he's had off-field, and that's all it can be to this point of any given pre-season at Carlton. But the 2 I want to just delve into initially are Craig McRae there, taking over from a famous Collingwood name in Nathan Buckley at Collingwood, and a very different person to Nathan Buckley. And then you've got the saga of last year, Sam Mitchell taking over controversially, given that Alistair Clarkson is still being paid $1 million to not coach Hawthorn in 2022. Yeah,
it's going to be a challenge for Sam Mitchell in particular for me, because I remember when Matty Knights took over from Kevin Sheedy, a lot of people said, good luck. And for Sam Mitchell, it's going to be a rough year for them. I can't see them winning more than 6 games.
Really?
Yeah, I think they could be a bottom 4 for mine, and nothing they showed in the pre-season changes that. North Melbourne's a massive game in round 1, because I don't see those 2 sides winning too many.
Yeah, he's not going to be entering any game thinking he's inferior to an opposition coach, though. You know him well, Lordo.
Yeah, but that could soon change, because if you can just see you're getting belted off the park, and that's where you have to be strong in your convictions to stick to it, not chase, fast, make moves and bring them back 30-year-olds in the replacement of young kids and those sort of things. I love the McRae move. Collingwood have always been, let's go for the top big fish. I love what they're doing, because he's going to help develop that club and that list. And I heard him also say we're going to move the ball forward. Probably a little. He didn't mean to whack Nathan Buckley, but you can see there that they went sideways and backwards and lost their way a bit, the Pies.
He's just so honest. I mean, the comments can be taken that way, but he doesn't mean them that way. Even the comment that Nathan Buckley was a man who said he's no longer wanted at Collingwood as an assistant coach, and then here he was again in the same chair accepting Nathan Buckley's role. Michael Voss, Lordo, there's no better person I've come across in footy than Michael Voss, for what it's worth. I think he's going to, second time around, have a major impact. Now, whether it's 2022... he will have impact at Carlton.
I think they'll have a major bounce. And we look at some of the moves that they've made, and it's got to be defensively. And we'll watch some clips of how well they did it against Melbourne. You see here, last year under David Teague, conceded the 4th most goals per game in 2021, 9 scores over 100 points when it's tough to score 100 points. Look at that percentage, 88. That's pretty much a bottom 4 side, percentage of 88. And they lost Liam Jones, and we'll talk about McGovern soon. But what the issue was at Carlton was Sard and Zach Williams and these guys, they were playing way off their men. And then you got guys like Wiedering, who likes to be arm across. So there was no cohesion. Some players were leaving their men to support. Some players were staying back on their men. So there was no trust amongst themselves. And then the forward pressure. Mark Murphy, for example, they were giving him games, but he wasn't able to apply pressure. You watch Matty Kennedy here, midfielders. Were they willing to get back and support their defence last year? I'd say no. So I think they'll get a bounce for sure under Michael Voss, because of the new coach and the respect they have with him for what he did as a player.
Part of that backline dynamic has Liam Jones obviously now exiting for COVID vaccination reasons. But Mitch McGovern, the experiment, I still can't get my head around this guy being a key to what they're about to do this year. His pre-season form, having said all that though, has been solid enough to think it could work.
Like his brother, he's going to have some games where he gets hurt. because of the way he plays, because he's not that close to his man, and he's looking to just see how many marks and roll off he can take. But there's going to be some games where he's best on ground.
Right.
So we haven't seen him really be best on ground in his career as a forward. So I love this move because he hasn't impacted on a game like that. I know it's a pre-season game, but he hasn't done that as a forward since he probably kicked the goal after the siren to draw one for the Crows against Collingwood. So, yeah, he owes them a lot at Carlton.
Quite creative with his ball use too, isn't he?
Well,
so, Adam Cerra's addition is going to bolster, obviously, that midfield, and the greatest beneficiary will be the captain, one at Paddy Cripps.
I think it's huge. I know we've got to be careful not to take too much from practice games, but he's sort of tried to carry the team. He's tried to do much. I think he's been selfish at times. Of Cripps. He's tried to take on tacklers. He's been caught holding the ball. He's had shots he shouldn't take because I don't think he's had the trust in his teammates. Now he has Cerra, who's a class act. He gets George Hewitt, who's going to be bang and crash all day for him. Sam Walsh, obviously superstar. And then you've got Matty Kennedy, who we'll see how long he can do it, but had one of the great pre-season games the other day. So he looked a rejuvenated player, Paddy Cripps.
Yep. You talk about the Hawks being, in your eyes, at the start of this season, a bottom four team. I've got West Coast in that same bracket, Lord. They've had a horrendous off-season. Jack Darling has returned, but is now injured after the vaccination issue. But on top of that, and more damningly for this club as it enters this season, some of those names on that list are still their best players. Askarellan is their most exciting player, and I don't know what happened to him in the back half of 2021 either, but obviously the captain and Luke Shuey, Dom Sheed, Liam Duggan, Elliot Yeo again, they're key players, Lauder.
Oh, and Adam Simpson, I think the great coaches rejuvenate themselves and find a way to get your players to just try and get through a period. So if they could even be 2-2 at round 4 or 3-2 at round 5, they just got to try and tick over a few wins. And Adam Simpson, he had his moments in the hub. Even the other day he said, hopefully we can put a side together. And then he said, but of course we will. He's got to be positive here and just try and sell to his players how they can get through this initial part of the season. Otherwise, it's going to be a long, long year for them.
Yep. The Bombers were very competitive for a half of footy against the eventual grand finalist Western Bulldogs in an elimination final last year, Lotto. It fell away for them after that, and that almost reflected their year, ups and downs. Mick Malthouse and others like what they're producing and it has got them potentially going very, very high. I get the feeling you don't see it as optimistically.
No, I think that to me you've got to win a final first before you can then suddenly be seen as a premiership side. It's very rare. The Western Bulldogs don't.
Western Bulldogs didn't.
That's the only time.
Even the Tigers hadn't before 17.
But no, they'd still.
They made finals.
They made finals, and that's what Essendon has done. But I think
and Melbourne came out of the finals last year.
But Melbourne sort of
they made a prelim 18.
18. So I think you've got to be there and experience it. And to me, Jake Stringer becomes so important for them. I think Harrison Jones is now injured in recent days. Peter Wright you're relying on. I like their midfield and I like their back line. But still, to me, you wonder where they can kick a winning score from. And the midfield is small, so they've got to deal with some big-sized midfields, which is going to be their challenge throughout the year.
Yep. Touched on a couple of new coaches, a couple of new faces on the playing side, Lordo, a couple of ready-made senior players. They went really high in the draft, and they were talked about before the draft, but Jason Horne-Francis and Nick Dacos, their disposal is already elite, and you would imagine their overall packages are just going to benefit from a season in the top system.
Yeah, I think they both believe they belong already. They're not interested in playing VFL footy. They're saying, I'm ready to go. It was interesting, they said Jason Horne-Francis will play predominantly forward. I want them to throw him in the midfield. I think he can handle it. I think he's ready. He's played against men for years in the SANFL. And this guy, some guys go through their careers not getting a best on ground in their life. He was best on ground for Collingwood in his first practice game or second practice game. So lock him in for 22 games. I think he'll be the rising star and he'll do some freakish things.
You're locking him in, eh?
I'm locking him in because I think, as I said, he's been ready to play AFL for 12 months.
Yeah.
He could have played for Collingwood last year. That's how good Nick Dacos is.
They're the biggest names out of last year's draft. You go back to 2014 and the number one draft pick that year was Paddy McCartin, who is on the verge of one of the great football fairy tales, Lordo, with how he's gone and at his second chance after all the concussion issues with the Sydney Swans could loom and emerge as a key back.
When he started at St Kilda, I think the game changed and he didn't suit the game with the mobility, getting high up the ground. he looks fitter than he's ever been. You know, he looks trimmer than he was at St Kilda and playing behind the ball with his brother. I think he's a great pickup because Dane Rampy's had to play undersized for too long.
Yeah.
I think Tom and Paddy back there, it's going to work for the Sydney Swans.
All right. When it's all said and done, it only matters for one thing. Who's there, as Melbourne was last year, who's there at the end in 2022, Lord?
I think a Melbourne-Brisbane grand final. And until I see a lot more, I think Chris Fagan's a good coach, but they've fallen away. So I think strategy-wise, he needs to lift again.
Yep.
Can't go past Melbourne going back-to-back at this point in time. I know it's boring, but Brisbane, I agree, are the ones that can upset it, but I think Melbourne again.
Yeah, I'm tipping Brisbane for what this exercise is worth, Lotto. Thank you as
Thanks,
always,
Dave.
and we will be back, as we will every single Monday of 2022, with the wrap-up of round 1 next week.